Julia Grace back in the studio with us today for another happiness hack. Now, we're talking about gratitude. It's a practice, not a perfect. That's typical of you to have such a great name. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you, and always a pleasure, particularly around one of my favourite topics, which is around gratitude. So, Lizzie, you very kindly read my book, Be Kind to Your Mind, and I've talked to you a lot about my the tools and the tips that I use to help my own mental health and wellbeing.
Yeah.
And I've got this list of them, and they all start with a F. So we've got our faith and our whānau and our fullness and our fitness and pharmaceuticals and all those wonderful things that we use to help us to maybe get through the wobbly days or even be prepared for them. And one of my favourites is actually this one. I call it thankfulness. So I'm really pushing the envelope with the F there, but gratitude, thankfulness.
Phonetic.
Yeah, it does. One of the best things about this is actually it's a happiness hack where science and scripture actually really meet beautifully on this, because there's a lot of science behind the fact that gratitude is really, really good for your brain. And of course, we've got, a whole lot of scriptures that tell us about thankfulness and, finding the joy and the gratitude in the small moments in our life.
Yeah.
And a couple of the things that I really wanted to point out is that, first of all, that when we express gratitude, so not just think it, but when we actually kind of let it out of our body in one way or another, we get a couple of things. First of all, we get a dopamine boost. So dopamine, that's that happy,
That feel-good thing.
Feel-good thing, the thing when you win something, that little burst of dopamine. We get one of those when we express gratitude, when we say thank you, or when we genuinely, maybe compliment somebody on what they've done or their work or whatever. And it's so nice for them, but it's actually good for us.
Yeah.
I like that it's a bit of a win-win.
Yeah, I never really thought too much about that, but that's exactly true. You feel a
Yeah.
little boost.
Yeah.
You've kind of made someone's day.
Have you ever thrown out a compliment to somebody in the supermarket or?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and how did it go?
Oh, yeah, I can remember a woman coming towards me once, and she dresses a lot like you, dopamine colours, right?
Yeah.
So she was just in a standard supermarket. Everything was kind of dull.
Mm.
Then she walks around the corner and she's got this bright purple dress on, an older woman, but
Yeah.
just absolutely owning it.
Yeah.
And I just stopped and I looked at her and I said, "You look amazing."
I love
And
it.
she was like, "Oh, thank you." Like, she was just so thrilled
Yeah.
that I'd stopped. And then I just walked off feeling equally hyped.
Yes. Yeah, you're like, hype girl, hype girl. Absolutely. And so what you do is not only are you boosting that person, but also I usually start with, this might sound weird, but, and
Yeah.
that sort of softens the blow a bit, because then they don't think I'm a stalker. But actually expressing that gratitude, it's good for us. So if we're encouraging other people in our world, it's good for them as well as the person they're telling. The second thing it does is it dampens down our fight, flight, freeze, fawn, stress responses. So those feelings in our body when we're put under pressure, where our body's wanting to respond by either feeling quite kind of wound up or really stuck and still. And expressing gratitude can help to dampen those responses. So it makes us feel better. It makes us a little bit calmer and a bit more able to deal with what's going on around us. And the third thing about it that I love is that the more you express gratitude, the easier it is to do. So the more you find things to be grateful for, the more you find things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
So there's this
It's
thing
so true.
in the brain, and it goes looking. It's called frequency illusion.
Oh, okay.
And the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. And now the best way to describe this is, if you buy a new car, guess what you see on the road?
The same car.
The same
Every
car. All of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, there's so many of my car on the road. There's not necessarily more of your car on the road. What's happening is your brain will highlight what it already knows.
Yeah.
So suddenly you're aware of a Suzuki Swift or whatever it is.
Rolls Royces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You're aware of them wherever you go. And so the beautiful thing that we can do with looking for things to be grateful for is, if you go looking, you're going to see more of them. Now, it's not always easy. And that's why I named this, it's a practice, not a perfect. Because that first initial start point can be challenging.
Yeah.
It can feel like, this is just, I'm just pretending everything's okay. We're not pretending everything's okay. We're simply looking for one thing to be grateful for. And the best news is, if you find one thing, you're more likely to find the next thing and the next and the next. So that's a happiness hack that we can use for ourselves, but also the whole family. And I encourage people to get their kids on the task of going happy hunting,
Yes.
go looking for things to be grateful for, and it's going to become an easier thing for them moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. And it does remind me of that scripture, having ears to hear and eyes to see, right?
Nice, yeah.
So great to see you today, Julia. Thank you for joining us for Happiness Hacks. Julia Grace, go check her out on all the socials and that awesome book of hers, Be Kind to Your Mind. See you next time, Julia.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you can catch all our interviews on Star. See you next time.